Yo, podcast people. Hello, ¿qué tal? It is super late on a Sunday. I'm recording this for the episode to go out on the Wednesday. It's an episode that we recorded back in June, so we were very much in the throes of lockdown. And someone just kind of hit me up on Instagram and said, "You've got to chat to this dude. He's amazing." And we managed to kind of figure out a day and did it via Zoom, and it was just such a great chat, because what it showed me, which I hope it shows you, is that no matter where you're at, there is always something that you can do, and that belief, that inner belief to just follow your gut and follow your dreams, is what this man has done his entire life. And he's kind of 30 years into directing, and he still finds that new passion, and he still finds that next project. He could probably just be sitting in his mansion counting his money, watching all the beautiful films that he's made, but he decides to kind of challenge himself. And I guess in these challenging times, it's nice to hear someone of that caliber still push themselves. So enjoy the ep. Big love.
Let's get started.
So, hello, ladies and gentlemen, film gods, podcast listeners, you absolutely amazing, wonderful people. It's now, I actually don't know how many weeks we've been in lockdown here in the UK. It feels like it's been forever, but it's absolutely flown by. And a lot has happened these last couple of weeks, and we've been charting in loads of different countries, and the opportunity to speak to someone across the pond who's such a lovely person, and I'm so glad that he said yes. So we're gonna go across the pond. It's not UK today. So without further ado, from me, what is your name, sir, and what is your role on the call sheet?
Hello there. My name is Sehr, and on the call sheet you would call me director.
Amazing. And what does being a director mean to you?
It is. I have to say, it was always. It's something that I grew into, and I love basically the creativity in it. Obviously, I think that's the main part. And as a director, I mean, you can go through so many different routes. I did music videos for over 10 years. Now I do a ton of commercials, and at the same time, I'm very much deeply involved into documentary projects. And I love the creative freedom is for me the most important thing that I love, that I like about the job. And it's something that that comes from childhood, because as a kid I loved to watch TV series, and then as a teenager I went to the movie theaters all the time, which I still do as much as any possible. And I think there's something that pushed me into that direction.
Amazing. Now I kind of want to delve into. I'd love to delve into the differences in all those processes, but I'd love to just hear the story of where you started and how you got over to where you are now in America. So I'd love to just get that kind of story, that little narrative, and then I'd love to get your opinion and how the process is from TV and commercials and documentary, and if you have to use like a different directing hat.
Sure. Let's start with my history, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I basically did when I was looking as a 20-year-old, after school, I looked for my calling. What do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I did an internship at BBDO at the ad agency in my hometown, Düsseldorf, Germany.
Okay.
I think it was it took 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of liked it, but it wasn't, it was an office job, and I know that an office job wouldn't necessarily be mine.
Yeah.
But what happened during that internship was quite interesting, because I was able to go with an art director onto a photo shoot And when I saw the photographer, when I had the atmosphere, when I saw what he was doing, I was super thrilled. And I thought like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then a little later, I went and got me an internship as a photo assistant. And I was able to assist a really well-known, a really good photographer at the time for about a year and a half. And then with her, the studio moved to the island of Mallorca for half a year. And there I was more bound to do work on the studio,
Nice.
more construction work than actual photography. And that half a year I had enough of that. Yeah, I became a builder, and it was okay for me, but when let's say the photographer went off to do photo shoot somewhere else, and I was still building the house or the studio, I grew frustrated, and I said like, that's it. Moved back to my hometown Düsseldorf, and then I looked around for another job as an assistant for photography, and a friend of mine didn't find one right away. And then a friend of mine pointed out that a production company they were looking for a camera assistant.
Nice.
I'm like, well, let's do it. I went there. They took me, and so I dove into the world of film.
Wow.
And I was an AC for about 1.5 years. But it dawned me after about a year. It was a ton of fun, but a lot of work. I mean, I think back in the day, my longest work day was like 64 hours.
What?
Without sleep. Yeah.
What? What?
Yeah.
How do you even work efficient? Like, hour 18. Once you hit hour 18, that 14 to 18 is madness. Once you go past the 20 hour, I don't even we've done it all. We've all done it. But I honestly, how do you get to 64 hours?
I don't know either. I mean, it wasn't all legal. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
But we did a very long shoot, almost like 20 hours, and then obviously I was called up in the office. I mean, after 20 hours, yourself, you're like,
wow.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah.
I was called up to the office and like, hey, mate, we need someone who's going to pick up a prop in Vienna, which is like a 12-hour drive or something like that.
What?
I'm like, okay, so I drove to Vienna, picked up something, prop we needed.
Yeah.
We desperately needed for a shoot. Drove back home, arrived at the studio. That was already day 2.
Yeah.
And obviously there was still shooting going on. And they're like, yeah, well, let's go.
So my Lord. That's
anyway,
I guess, it's the slight craziness that you need to have. It's super like that, that kind of stuff doesn't really happen now because that's just super dangerous and the industry's changed. But there's that level of, has to be that level of kind of crazy that every single film crew that I've seen, you just got to, it's not a 9 to 5. You go to the same office, you talk to the person opposite you and, you do your paperwork and you go home. Was that just pure passion or were you just too scared to kind of say, yeah, I kind of feel a little bit tired. I think I need to sleep.
No, you know what? Back in the day, it was pure passion. I think whatever I do, I do it, as good as any possible. That's something that is in me. But I have to say, I loved where we are. I love the fact that it's almost like a pirate ship. And of course nowadays you wouldn't do it anymore, but I have to say I look back at it and laugh because I thought it was good. And I grew up with skateboarding and punk rock music, so for me it's just like, rock and roll, let's do it. I didn't care. And at the end of the day, I'll tell you later, something really great came out. So it was basically, we were pushed really hard by the owner of the company, but at the same time he rewarded us greatly. So, and I loved the job, so I basically didn't care. At the end of the day, I enjoyed it and I had fun.
So what was what happened? What was the positive?
Well, the positive later, because after let's say a year, it was one of the old school studios back in the 80s where we had we had several cameras, 35 mils, 16 mils. We had all the lighting, with all the grip equipment. everything. And after about a year and a half, it was clear to me that I would not want to become a DOP.
Okay. What
It
made
was
you say
too
that?
technical for me. Well, for me, honestly, it was more, when I was sitting there and, doing video recording and doing the clap, being the clapper loader and everything. Obviously you watch all the people that you work with, and and you think you project yourself into that situation. Do you want to be, let's say, a gaffer, or do you want to be a DOP?
Yeah.
What is the DOP thing? And then I watched obviously closer and closer the director who tells the story. Who is, and it dawned me that telling the story was for me more tempting. To have that big overview, to tell the story, was for me more tempting than to create the images. It's just something that's in you. And for me also, I have to say, being a DP was for me too technical at the end of the day. I love the freedom to talk and think about the story. How will the actors or the models or whatnot, what kind of story are you having fun with? And so I went for that. Now I'm still in that same company, and I went up to my boss, and I said, like, hey, listen, here's the thing. I want to become a director. And I in my free time, I wrote a little short film, a script for a short film. And I went up to him and said, like, well, listen, I want to become a director. Would you mind helping me? Can I maybe borrow some of our equipment for a little short film that I'm planning to do? And he looked at me and he said, like, you can have the whole studio, do whatever you like.
Wow.
So I thought that was quite amazing.
That is amazing. You kind of think the amount of thousands of pounds that runners, clapper loaders, anyone like that wants to be directing, you got to work away, save a bit, work away, save a bit, and then to be able to get the access to a studio. That's really. Now, was that something that he or she, the owner of the company, did often, or did you just have a special relationship that you'd work really hard for them and they just went, yeah, okay, look, here's a chance?
I think that was it. I mean, he was a very, very interesting character. He was very, very unique. He would push you. He was, for example, he was complete. How do you say that? A clean freak.
Oh yeah.
Everything in the studio. We had a huge studio. It was on a horse ranch actually, outside of Düsseldorf, and it was amazing. I haven't seen anything like it throughout the last 30 years of my career. Anything. And everything was top notch, but everything we cleaned every day, But he would push us so again, 20-hour days. No, that's what it was, But then he also is like, hey, you want lunch for the crew? Let's have all sushi from the best place in Düsseldorf. You know what I mean? Nice. So he knew exactly what he was doing. I had one thing with him, and I think it tells you a little bit to answer that question who he is. We had one. We went with a crew, and we only had half day. And to make this a very long story short, the crew ended up in my hotel room, and we completely destroyed the hotel room. It was an international crew with like Dutch people, British people, and we had a sort of a room party. But then I woke up and the whole room was trashed. Obviously, we kept the next day we kept shooting.
Yeah.
A month later,
did you have to put like the little "please do not clean" thing on the handle? You're like, fuck, I can't let the cleaner in today. We smashed the telly. We've done a Led Zeppelin.
It was Led Zeppelin style. I mean, one of the beds was completely broken, torn apart. I mean, I don't know who started to rip off the wallpaper.
But you did say you're a punk rock and a skateboarder, it kind of makes sense.
The toilet bowl was filled with little Jägermeister glasses. It was terrible. So nevertheless, a month later, he called me up into the office, right? And he says like, he looks at the paper and he shows it to me, and it's the invoice for renovating that particular hotel room.
Wow.
It's like, well, I figured it was like, you know, it was your room. Is that correct? And I'm like, yes, sir, it was. And he's like, would you mind me telling who was like part of that whole ordeal? And I'm like, well, I'd rather not, if you don't mind. I mean, it's my fault at the end of the day anyway. It's my room, so I'm responsible. And he looks at me and says like, you know what? I respect that. That's all right. So,
I was hoping you'd turn around and you go, he was really pissed off that you hadn't invited him in.
most likely because he was there actually, but he was like, you know, but he said like, okay, here's the deal. Looks like fun.
Yeah.
It's fine by me. I pay for it. Don't worry about it. But I won't have anything like that again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, and I walked out and it was all fine. So that's who he was, you know, and that's why I think he expected you to work really hard and to do everything that you're asked for, like 64 hours. But if you ask for, can you rent me a car, or can I get this, or can I just use all the super expensive film equipment? You know, I mean, I shot my first short on 35 millimeters.
Wow.
It was quite ridiculous.
What was that like? Did you feel ready? Was it your first real attempt at directing? How did that go?
I think the film turned out quite well. I was recognized by my hometown, you know, as a film of art, which was nice.
Wow.
I don't know particularly, I wouldn't say that I was ready. It was more of like, I don't try it, I just do it kind of deal, you know? Because I mean, at the end of the day, are you ever really ready until you do it, you know? Then you find out, I guess. But it was quite an exciting. It was an important. Obviously, it was an important stepping stone for me in my career, and in moving on. So we did it. We edited it. It was exciting to have it. We rented a movie theater in my hometown in Düsseldorf. Had a big premiere party or a big party, and it was well received also in the press. So it made me proud and happy, and it gave me the energy to push on.
Amazing. And what did pushing on look like? What did you do? What were the next steps?
Oh, the next step from there, it became really small because back in Düsseldorf there weren't many film production companies, and I wanted to move on and assist other directors in my hometown, because so far it didn't dawn me that I have to move away. That came just a year later. And I went to another production company and I asked, and I knew that the director who owns it, and I said like, hey, I want to become a director. I did this film now, and can I assist you maybe for a while so that I learn, you know, more about the trade of directing? But he rejected me. He said, no, I don't want to breed, you know, my other directors. I don't do that, because next time you get the job and I lose it. So, you know, he was very tough about that. He's like, okay, got it. And then I found my own production company. Did it with a couple of friends, and we started to see what we can do. You know. It was quite absurd, but the great thing is that a friend of mine came to me and asked me if we want to do those videos for karaoke. You know, when you go to the karaoke bar, you have those videos in the background and stuff. And I think it was Pioneer, and they offered me, I mean, very little money, but they offered me to do the production company / me to do 20 music videos for karaoke.
Wow.
Right? And we sat down at that point and said like, yeah, let's take it. And I sat down with my partner, who was or he still is a DOP. You know, and it was the beginning of our careers, and we said like, okay, now we have this amount of money to do 20 of those videos. Either we make them and the possibility obviously was either make them cheap and get some money out of it, or try to push as much as possible into the production of those videos, so that we have something that we can build up a reel, right? And we did that. So, and for me, it was that was for me. I have to say that was one of the. That's where I got experience, because I think we shot like, I'd say over several weeks we shot like 4 a week, So we went, and it was crazy. But by the time it went through, I was at least somewhat experienced. We had our ups and
20
downs
music videos under your belt. That might take a director years to do 20 music
Yeah, no,
videos.
exactly. And plus we said, like, you know what? They don't, how they are. If you look at them, if you ever did karaoke, it's terrible. But what we did is, like, we rented a 16 millimeter camera because so that my business partner, the DP, he could like practice shooting music videos, and he would work on film, and for me it looked good. And after that we can edit a reel and and we go on,
Amazing. And so did that,
and after
what did that lead to?
Well, that led to my first job as for an ad agency, also by accident. But it was back in the day. I believe it was the late '80s, and and there was just like some, let's say, the far right at that point. Like, there were riots from the far right.
Yep.
In Germany, and so my buddies and me, we looked at that. I think they back in the day they torched even a how do you say that, refugee camp.
Okay.
And we were shocked by it.
Wow.
We were shocked by it, and we sat together with a huge bunch of creatives and friends around the company, and we came up with a project and we wrote 2 films. Against that, so there's more of a social, for refugees, and foreigners in the country. We wrote that, and then we approached, like super naive. We really approached a couple of ad agencies, sent it to them, or went there and said, like, hey, we wrote this. How do you say? What do you think about it? Let us know. It would be great. And we literally got a phone call the next day saying, hey, this is exactly what we were looking for.
Wow.
We want to do it.
Yeah. Well, you kind of hit the zeitgeist, that kind of, because it's finding a topic that's meaningful. You're going to be able to find a voice. You give your voice to it. And is finding your, for a project of that passion, or for that depth of I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but for a project like that's not, it's not just a chocolate bar commercial. It's got depth to it. Do you come at it from did you have to come at it from a different perspective?
No, I think it just came out. It honestly, it came out of our rage about what had happened. We were upset about it, and we felt that this is an injustice and we have to do something about it. And I have to say, it was amazing, So we all sat in a cafe or in our little tiny production company, which was my living room more or less. And we had like several artists from that tiny film community, and everybody chipped in. And so I think that's what gave it so much energy. And we were quite thrilled that then when ad agency said, like, well, we want to do something like that. The films are completely right. Let's meet. Let's do it. And then we had to scramble to produce it. Because we never did anything like that before. It was crazy.
Well, it's like you're making your own luck.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like the short film. Suddenly it was also a weird moment, because suddenly it's like they called me, keep in mind still landline phones and all, and and they're like, yeah, you got the job, send us a budget. And I'm like, okay, we'll do. Can I do it in 2 days? Yeah, the sooner the better. Okay, click. Never had a budget, didn't know anything about it.
Add another couple of zeros. You're just like, okay, 1 million.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and then I called my old production company, the old producer I told you about, and asked them to send me a budget sheet.
Yeah.
And then I basically learned from that sheet. We learned how to do it. We sent it in. The TV producer was happy about it. We're like, okay, cool. And we did it. And then we had these. We created 2 films. We produced 2 films. I directed one of them. Wow. And suddenly I had a reel, and then I sent that reel. I mean, it was a small one, but it was a reel, and I sent it out to. And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, what's next? Are we at a dead end here in our town, or what's happening? And then I sent it over to a production company in Hamburg, and they liked the reel and called me and asked me if I wanted to come over, and I drove to Hamburg, and then next thing I know is I moved to Hamburg.
Wow. And all of this, it kind of, there's some people kind of go to film school or did meet, all of that. It didn't seem like there was any of that. It was just like, I think I want to do this. You went and did it. And then I think I wanted to do that. Yeah. So you went and did it. There was a lot of just kind of gut instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. Film school comes later, and that also had a reason. But it was gut instincts, and I think a pure passion, and just like as you said, go out and do it. And I obviously also a fair amount of luck. But
you made your own luck there. You got an idea. You wrote to you worked hard. You asked him, can I make a short film? He said, yes. You saw a thing, you wrote an idea, you pitched it to people. You didn't just sit at home talking about the idea. You went out and you made, you kind of sent it to ad agencies. Luck, the more I talk to people on here, yes, luck is part of it, but you put yourselves, there's a chap called Johnny Frankel who's a producer and exec producer, and it was the thing that he said. It was like, you make your own luck, and it's suddenly something flicked in my head when you kind of talk about it, and you go, yeah, you as a camera assistant worked hard. You then asked, can I make a short film? You then came up with an idea, and you got, it's there's a lot of, anyway, I'm waffling. You know what I mean? Luck has part of it,
Yeah. No, I'm luck is part, but you're absolutely right. And I would even call it sometimes being just like also with a certain amount of naivety,
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you would tell me now, hey, I have an idea and I send it to an ad agency, you're like, those chances are really low,
Yeah.
But I kept doing it. I mean, I remember when I was always a big Nick Cave fan, and saw him several times, and then I read his first book, and NDF, the Angel, and I thought like, well, maybe I can make a script out of it. That would be awesome. And I flew to London and really met the publisher, talked to him, and he said, after it's set in London, he for an hour, he said like, yeah, I give you the rights for a year. I'm like, what? I didn't even have to pay anything.
Wow.
So I think that's a good example of being naive, loving something, and then talk to people and see how far it goes,
Amazing. So you kind of touched on it there when I kind of mentioned film school. Now, for me, in my head, you kind of, the progression would be, film school, camera assistant, director, but it feels like you kind of went camera assistant, runner, photography, camera assistant, director, and then you went to film school. So what was the reasoning and what was the thought process behind then going to film school?
Well, I did a couple. I moved to Hamburg, did a couple of commercials there. I think it was my second commercial. Here we are again. I was lucky enough to win my first Lion in Cannes.
Wow.
And then but then I started to do music videos, a lot of them. But then there's a certain need in me either to go for features, but I wanted to learn further. I thought like I was, and I still am a believer that it would be perfect if you work on set as much as you can, and ideally on different positions, because I think that's for me the best film school to this day.
Yeah.
But I wanted to learn. I just at that very moment I thought I learn a little bit more would be good, And then there was always this weird. I had this weird dream of mine to go to the U.S. So I basically at a certain point I applied to the American Film Institute, and that was literally the only film school I applied to. And they only take 25 directors a year, but they took me.
Wow.
And so I packed my bags and.
Is that because of your show reel, because of your history, or what did they look at what you've done and gone, right, we're just putting the icing on the cake here? We're not kind of, did your experience get you there? Did they tell you why you were chosen?
They didn't tell me, but I think it was the icing of the cake. I think, because what you did is you sent the reel. At that point, I think it was a fairly okay reel already. And then it wasn't, because still it wasn't too commercially. There was still bits and pieces of art or free work and music video bits in, and then obviously, you write a letter to them, and then you have an interview. The AFI conducts an interview with you where the director of the school talks to you for an hour.
Nice.
And
just
that
picks
went
your
well.
brain, sees if you got a passion for, or is it just a chat?
No, they pick our brain. I think it is about passion, and they want to know who you are and where your passion is and why you really want to, go to the AFI. And I found it quite interesting later, because what they do, and I think they did a good job there, because in 1 year you only have like 120 students, but they showed you the reel of all different students. We came together in the movie theater and we watched those, so that you get to know the people, and it was quite interesting to see what they chose, because sometimes it was just like a young girl came out of high school and she did a film in her closet, Wow. But it was somewhat appealing, and they picked it. So I'm like, wow, that's interesting, So yeah, so it was that huge passion to go to the States, but it also was that idea that I thought like, that's where I am right now. I was 29, I believe, or 28, and why don't I push it further,
Yeah, because I guess
I wanted to push it further, and I'm one of the characters, or one of the guys. I mean, when I did my first jobs and earned my first money as a director, I wasn't, I was never into flashy cars or anything like that. So I kept my money a little bit together so that I can afford the school at that point.
Nice.
And I thought that's a better investment and that's more fun. So, in 95, we basically then moved to LA.
And then, so, stepping off the plane, moving, going and joining that LA cohort of directors. What does it feel like? What's the reality of it? Because, there's runners that I speak to for some of the episodes, and they kind of go, I want to get into Hollywood, the directing, feature film directing. But what's the reality, and how was it for you kind of going and becoming part of that world?
Oh, I honestly, I didn't, at the time, I didn't think about it. I have to admit, because again, it was just like, hey, I want to go to the school. I want to be in the States. I want to stay in the States. I made that plan up when I was 15. When I was 15, I pinned in a 6-foot American flag above my bed and said, like, that's where I'm going to be.
You learn the anthem, every night you'd salute the flag. And
No, well, not that extreme, but it's something, when it was all in my culture,
Yeah.
all my friends, all the skating, the surfing, the this, the
Yeah.
that, the films. So I always wanted it, always.
Mm.
Was quite a weird moment. Then later, I don't know how many years later, when I was standing at the inauguration and we became Americans, I felt like I really literally saw that flag above my bed, in
Wow.
my room. But anyway, coming back to the question, I still think it's not easy by any means to go, and it's not even easy for me. I still work a lot in Europe, or worldwide, which is nice. But I guess I saw more the business in general and the US in front of me, and not like go into that line. But I still think it's possible, but you know what you have to wish for. It's a long process. You have to be out and about, meet the right people, be there at the right moment, at the right time. But then then I guess it's cool.
And then, so
fun.
you kind of you stepped off the plane. I guess it sounded like you were saying you were kind of late 20s, early 30s. You've done your year of film school.
Yep.
And it feels like that kind of going to film school at that time, you could just immerse yourself Monday to Sunday in the art form of directing and learning the craft, to then become a career and to have lasted as long. And I guess it sounds like you always truly believed it was going to happen, but looking back now, the last 10, 15, 20 years of a career, what did you learn? What's happened? What did America give? What did and then I do want to ask you one of my first questions, which was, how does your creative start differ between the features and the thing and the documentaries and TV commercials? But what does having worked in America, what's it given you? What have you learned?
It's a big question. I'm not sure. I think I learned variety, because I think shooting here in the US or business in the US is quite different than, let's say, in Switzerland or in Germany, or in Austria, wherever. It's a different attitude. It's a different way to tackle things, to approach things. And we learned that step by step. I think that's the biggest thing I learned. And to be out here, people are, if you're a director or if you're a DP, very, very, very focused on the project, and I like that. I mean, obviously in Britain too, but here there is a certain, I'd say, aura or thing around it. People are very serious about it.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna ask it, or else I'll keep forgetting to ask it. But that creative process, being a director, coming up with ideas, letting creativity kind of flow through the body into the finger to write and draw, and like, how do you tackle the different formats, the short films, the features, the TV commercials, and music videos? Is there a one size fits all, or do you have to alter your work method?
I don't think it's a one size fits all. And I mean, I have to say, even after 30 years, I'm still refining and still working on my work process, and it changes. It changes the way I want to. Now I'm completely into small crews and as tiny as possible. But that's a different question. The music videos I liked quite a bit. When I was before film school and after film school, I did about 10 years of only music videos.
Wow.
Because for some weird reason, it didn't, even though I came from that world and already tapped into and won my first cam line, there was something that I wasn't too fond of. And I enjoyed the freedom of music videos back in the day. Because there, as a director, and as I mentioned before, coming from a very musical city. I mean, my friends and me, we spend about 5 nights a week in concert halls.
Wow.
We were lucky. We knew a lot of people, so we could go to every night to a different show, and I loved it. And so later, I loved working with bands. Being with bands, being with them, or talking to bands, and then coming up with a concept for them, because you're the one who writes the concept. And that I really enjoyed quite a bit. And then, but that was for a stretch of about 10 years. And then I honestly, at that very moment, I turned to my wife and I said, like, if I have one more person dancing in front of my camera, I'm gonna freak.
It's time to change. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, you did it for 10 days, 10 years, and you know what? I had it. That's it. And it accidentally it fell together with remember the early 2000s or 2000, I think. That's when, remember Napster and all, and then suddenly the music video world that went down.
Yeah.
All the budgets went down, and at that I was just like that step in front of it, where I said, like, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore. And then I did, and that's something that was really important for me. Then I did a half-year sabbatical after that, where I wanted to think about, it was obvious that advertising would be the next step again. But I wanted to think about it, and then also I wanted to do something else. And I used the sabbatical to work as a chef in 2 kitchens in Hamburg, Germany.
Oh wow! So were you working in America and then went, right, I've got to go, I want to move back to Europe, or where was that?
No, it wasn't moving. I was always fascinated with food, and still am.
Yeah.
And again, it was something in me that I said, like, hey, it was also really the idea that I felt, that I had once with a film school, where I said, like, you know what, I want to learn more, because if I'm a director and if I want to tell stories about people, I have to be outside, I have to do things that, because other than that, you become like detached, and so I was sitting in LA with a friend, and I cooked for him, and back in the day with like tons of guests in the house, and I was always cooking, and a friend of mine owns a rather well-known restaurant in Hamburg, and he says, like, well, whenever you want to, and I said, like, you know what, I think I'm thinking about a sabbatical, maybe I can go somewhere and work in the kitchen, just like, normal kitchen work. And he says, like, well, anytime. Why don't you can come by anytime. And literally I just grabbed a small bag and went over there.
Nice.
For half year. I mean, we left that. My wife was still in the US mostly, and she came to visit from time to time, because my wife is also was in the film industry, and she's a production designer, and she did a ton of the big R&B videos back in the day. She did worked with Whitney Houston a ton, and sing, and Christina Aguilera and whatnot. So she was doing her thing, and I was going to Hamburg and cook there, and I worked from 8 to 4 in one kitchen, and then I went to the next restaurant, and they all worked from 4 to 12, and that's for half a year.
Yeah, and that's a really understanding wife, and I think an amazing concept to even kind of contemplate, because you kind of think, well, you must have you had that. I don't want to say like, it's not a weird. I kind of the phrase that kind of comes to mind is that kind of midlife crisis of what am I doing, where am I going? But it's not a midlife crisis. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you haven't bought the expensive car and having affairs. It was like something that just sparked in you that you're like, I've got to go and do something. I'm going to go to Hamburg, and I'm going to be a chef for 6 months. And you got a partner that's just like, okay, cool, do what you do. That's really important. That's an amazing relationship. I
also like to work with my hands. I still do, so, and I felt it was I wouldn't say it was a midlife crisis. I think it was, I really knew why I would do it, I wouldn't say it was more like a therapy, but it felt good.
Yeah.
And of course, working in two restaurants, day in, day out, working 16-hour days was quite exhausting, because especially in the kitchen. But at the same, and after those 6 months, I was really exhausted, but I was also very, very happy. You know, and then my brain was charged again, and I went and tackled commercials.
Yeah, it kind of feel like you emptied yourself of all of the anxieties that film sets can give you. Do you know? Because it's film sets are a tough place. They're a tough place to work in, and especially music videos. And and I guess for a busy director that's doing massive commercials, you're kind of, your treatments, your prep, your production, your shooting. It's a hamster wheel of a certain part of you, a certain part of your soul, that actually being a sous chef or being a prep chef or just cleaning plates in a kitchen, it's a totally different part of you. So it kind of felt like, did you then suddenly go, right, it's time to leave? Did you know when it was time to leave and go back? Had like the fire just been reignited again?
No, I think it was clear that it's only for half a year. So I knew, that's what I mean. I knew exactly what it is. And I also would look at it this way. I mean, it is also the thing that when you work as a director, you work with it's a lot of things happen in your head and you tell stories, but there's a whole world out there that is quite exciting too,
Yeah.
And I always wanted to tap into these little things, so that I'm not the guy who only did this. It's not that I'm a director and I'm that one trick pony, I think there's more to life than that.
Did you get any good stories? Did you get any good ideas when you did that, took the 6 months off?
You know what? Not really, because I was so busy and dealing with the whole situation, and try to because it is basically working in the kitchen is basically exactly as Anthony Bourdain describes it in his first book. So it was wild, and I soaked it up like a sponge. I mean, I'm really close friends with a couple of the chefs I worked for to this day, and
Amazing.
It was just an amazing experience, a life experience, and that's awesome.
So you've done that,
and then
you've come back. You knew that commercials were going to be the thing. What did that next phase of life look like? What did the kind of the commercials part of your directing career look like?
I mean, obviously, it took me a while to get into that world, and basically step by step, as I almost as I did it before, because after 10 years of music videos, I mean, I could show a couple of the handful of commercials, and the one that I won the Cannes line for, but obviously they were already 10 years old, right? So I was the guy who did. I mean, in Germany, luckily everybody knew me because I did so many music videos and they were awarded and whatnot. And so, but you know how it is. I mean, 30 seconds commercials is a very different beast than a 3-minute music video. And so it's not that people were opening their arms and said like, hey, that's so great that you finally decided to do commercials.
Yeah.
So basically, I get my first
one. Yeah,
exactly. And then I won, the first job, the second job, and then I basically started to build up a reel,
Wow.
And that's always something, I think, for younger directors or for directors in general. I find that because in the beginning, obviously, you get the job that is offered to you, and then later, once you then basically at a certain point, you realize where your strength is and what you want to do, and and then you go after that,
Yeah. But it kind of the kind of the 6 months. I'm kind of, as you're talking, I get little visions, I get little thoughts, I get little pictures, and it feels like that every time you start something and you get to a point that you suddenly realize that the journey that you've gone on hasn't actually been the destination that you needed to, but it's given you the thought process of where you need to then go. So it's like, starting off in stills, it was good because it's where you thought, but then actually seeing the art director, which then led to getting into the production company, that led to being in camera team, that then you went, right, there it is. That's directing. But then even when you're in directing, it felt like having the passion or the young child mentality or the work experience mentality of just going, I'm just going to say yes to every job. You could have very easily spent 10 years doing, music videos, just gone, right, I'm going to get into TV commercials, and then just kind of, I don't know, it just feels like you've kind of, the excitement, that passion that you started with, you just always kept it, and that's the thing that kept pushing you to find the next thing. And is that something that
I think that's well put. I think that's better than I could have put it.
No,
and I think
probably not so well put. I rambled a bit, but
yeah, no. It's exactly that. It's that excitement that I still have for our business, absolutely. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also mixed with life, And I don't think that other people. Let's keep it that way. For me, it's not like I'm doing this now and it will be doing it forever, because who knows, there's so much things out there that can be done or you want to try out. And I'm curious. I think it's the excitement and being curious, really.
Yeah. Well, looking at your Instagram, I think being a cowboy should be that's the next 6 months off, is to try and get into the rodeo if you haven't already done it. Just one bucking bronco.
My wife. Yeah, no. I was at a rodeo with my wife, and we were, on the shoot, which is really exciting. And I looked down at the back of a bull, and my wife, who I'm married to since 25 years, she looked at me and she's like, "Don't even think about it." She knew exactly what I was.
She knew. She knew.
Damn.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Well, look, sir, we're kind of getting close to the hour mark, and I love to just keep these in your time is precious, and I don't want to kind of go on for too long. But firstly, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, because your story and the passion that you've shown, and the kind of reality for film students and for that next generation of runner, it's like you just fucking got on with it. You just did it. You didn't spend days or weeks or years thinking about what to do and moaning that nothing's happened. You're just like, I've got an idea, I'm going to pitch it to them. I've got an idea, I want to go and hit. That I think that's from your story, that's kind of given me a bit of a push to be like, yeah, don't sit around and just talk about building this and doing that. And it's like you doing it led to the thing. It might not have been what you were setting out to do, but it led to what you were meant to do. And I think that's what I'm taking away. And I really, really appreciate that. So the last kind of little bit, I love to just ask I give the floor to you for the last bit, but the second to last question is just the advice to your younger self, having gone through what you've gone through, having had the courage to just throw yourself into the deep end in every scenario that you put yourself in, going to America, leaving America, just dropping it all and becoming going into and working in the kitchen. What would you be saying if I was the younger you? What are you telling me?
I'd say to myself that use the time between jobs for your own creativity. Which I think I did, but I do it more. Because it's even though we live in weird times, but it's a beautiful world. There are so many interesting things out there. And I remember that when I was between music videos or between commercials, I would come home and relax. And then, when you're younger, you worry about the next job, Stop that, do something that is your passion. And then from passion, you go to the next step,
Yeah.
Like for me with rodeo, I love rodeos. I go to rodeos all the time. Now I'm trying to get a rodeo series done about the American rodeo,
Such an institution. So we spoke offline, but at the beginning of it, so it's we're recording this. It's 2020, and in March we went and I went to Houston to see my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and we went and we managed to get to go to the rodeo before it all got shut down and locked down, and it feels like a real institution. Like,
Absolutely.
standing up, the anthem's going. Some of the biggest flags I've ever seen are in Texas, like in Houston. It's
Yeah,
just
for sure.
ridiculous. And it's it's got this kind of family feel, carnival feel, party environment, and just seeing like these men and women riding these really angry animals. It's
Oh
impressive.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it is an absolute institution, and it is for smaller communities in rural America. This is basically the highlight of the year, and I like that they take pride in it. And you were always, I by now I was so happy and so thankful that I could hang out and talk to so many ranchers and cowboys and farmers. And when you realize, because they all let me in, which is amazing. And when you realize how hard these people work, basically every day, that is the one time in the year they come together. That's the rodeo, where a community really comes together. Everybody helps, everybody's there, and that's what they love.
It's amazing.
To celebrate that cowboy way. Yeah. I'm quite fascinated by it. It started with like a friend of mine took me to my first rodeo. She said like, well, let's go to Gallup, New Mexico. My family's organizing a rodeo. Would you like to come? And I jumped on a motorcycle, went to New Mexico, looked at the rodeo, and that was basically it. And since then I keep going to rodeos, and now I'm basically, developing that project. So.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing a video of you riding these horses, like just chasing, just trying to lasso one of these little calves down. Like, it's incredible, ladies and gents. If you haven't actually, there are so many things that happen at a rodeo, and the communication between the cowboy and their horse, and there were so many nuances that I had no idea. I thought it was just, you turn up, you see a bull and that was it. But there's just so many intricacies and nuances, and that farming community feel. It's super important, as you said. It's amazing. I love it. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. It's been absolutely. It's been such a pleasure to hear your story in such. And even now you can just hear it in your voice after 30 years. It's not about. There's like the shine. It's like your career in your mind is still this lovely brand new shiny car, and it's not full of dents. It's like you've got I just feel like that energy is super important for all of those next generations coming up. Even when you feel like you're at the top of your game, even if you feel like you've done it all and seen it all, there's always something and a story to be told. And that's what I'm getting from this episode. So I really, really thank you, sir. So for the end, I push my little IKEA wheelie chair away from the mic. And it's yours to just, if there's someone you want to thank, or a project that you want to big up, or an association, or anything that's on your mind that you just want to kind of to get off your chest, the floor is yours, sir. What would you like to say?
Thank you so very much. I obviously, as we talked about it several times before, I want to give a big shout out to my wife, who is an amazing trooper and the best thing in my life.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for her and all her energy. And obviously, I'm also thankful to everybody I work with throughout the world.
Boom. And that's it. And we've talked about in the episode, it's like that person, it's it's that strong character, it's that strong person behind, without that one person behind you that's going, go for it, follow your dream, push it. It's really tough to make it in this industry.
No, and I was so thankful for for that we recorded that, and we talked about her several times, and we just had and I'm not kidding you. We just had how do you say that, silver anniversary.
Oh yeah.
We're married now since 25 years. And
Wow.
she's the one person that pushes me all the time. You know, she's the one person, and you picked up on that. She's the one person when I'm gone for 3 months, she doesn't care. You know, she is the one person who pushes me further, you know, and that's so amazing to have. You know, there's no better, it doesn't get any better. You
You're a
know?
lucky man.
Yeah, no, I know. You know, again, you know, we and you said, like, remember when we talked about, you know, my cooking experience,
Yeah.
and like, what was your wife thinking? And she's like, oh, she pushed me out the door, and not because she was, I can't say she was tired of me, you know.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, you know what, follow your dream.
Yeah.
Follow your
She
dream.
knows you.
You know, and yeah, no, she loves me. She loves me, and that's the best thing you can do. And then all you can do is love back. You know.
Nice. Ugh, what a beautiful ending to a fantastic episode. Well, look, ladies and gents of the Film Gods, I know you've had an amazing time listening. It's going to have just given you, I hope, that impetus that even if you're not in the film industry, that passion for a project that you have, you know, you may be working in a job that you don't enjoy, but you love art or photography or something. You can still do it. You can find time, you can make time. Have a lovely rest of lockdown, UK, and wherever you are in the world. You know, coronavirus seems to be still happening and pushing people into decisions and doing things that they hadn't and wouldn't normally want to do. And I just send you all massive love and massive positive vibes, just that you can all get through this. And once we're through this, there's going to be a Netflix series, or there's going to be something about the rodeo, and it's going to be this man here on this podcast, and you would have heard it here first. So just big love. Thank you so much for listening, ladies and gents, and until we meet again, that is a wrap. So that was a chat with the king or queen in the game. I'll give it a shout at the end so you all know the name. It's the Film Gods Podcast. The what? The Film God Podcast.